I think what dentists struggle with, and I would love your opinion on this because you're a dentist, like, do you have to have a level of perfectionism with dental because of the clinical side of it? You're operating in such a small space and there is really no margin for error, right? Like there isn't. Business is not that way. You actually have a lot more room for error. You can't let that attitude of clinical dental carry over into your business. Instinctually, you think it's like, oh, that's going to help me. But in fact, it just ticks everybody off and just creates this like unbearable environment. Welcome back to another episode of My Dental Playbook. I'm your co-host, Gary Bird. Along with my friend, Dr. Blake Hamblin, today we're going to be diving into what it takes to actually grow a practice. And you know what? We can give you all the tactical help, all the things that, resources and checklists and all those kind of things. And those are important. But there's one thing that's more important than all of that. And it's your mindset. Don't tune me out yet. It's a growth mindset. If you truly want to grow your practice, you have to change the way that you're thinking. And in today's episode, we're going to dive deep into what that means and the 7 books that absolutely transformed the way that we think about business. Stay tuned. All right, another episode and another topic that revolves around growth. So recently, I've been on Facebook just arguing with dentists, as it's kind of my job. And Dr. Blake was on in the same chat groups and kind of going back and forth with some dentists. And something popped into my mind, and we were talking about it, is, there's like the haves and the have-nots. And it doesn't boil down to like money or great practices or great businesses. It boils down to having a growth mindset versus kind of like a victim mentality, I would say. So I asked Dr. Blake, can you give me a rundown on like your thoughts on this? And he was like, absolutely, but I'm not going to be compassionate about it. So I was like, perfect. That's what I want. And so let's talk about this thing of a growth mindset, like what that really means and how that really separates the people who are winning in business and the people who aren't.
Yeah, man, I could go on for days with this. And I feel like this was just like ingrained into me growing up, playing sports. And I remember my dad, I would go 3 for 4 in baseball with 3 home runs and strike out once. And it was like someone out there's working harder, doing better, like next time, And so it was just like, it's always been in my mind of, even when like fear of failure was often something that drove me. And my dad would always say, like, when have you ever failed? And I would look back and be like, you're right. I haven't, and, things didn't always go my way, but it was like, I always found a way. And I think that carries over into business. And as you run into what is bound to be obstacles, you have a choice and you get to decide, do you want to run through the obstacle or do you want to run away from it? And paradise is on the other side of it. And you continue to deal with the same problem if you run away, is what I've learned. And so I think like mentality is truly what makes the difference between Elon Musk and the startup that you haven't heard of because they quit. You know what I mean? And it literally, he's the smartest man on the planet when you think of business, but he's also he has the most fortitude when it comes to running into problems. I mean, that man slept on couches, took the most risk he could ever imagine, and now he's rewarded for it. But had he quit or run away, he wouldn't be the man he is.
Yeah, 100%. So real quick, mydentalplaybook.com. Go there at the end of this episode. We listed a bunch of books that we both read around leadership that have really changed our lives and the way that we think. And so we think those will help you out if mindset is something that you're working on, obviously, because you're listening to this episode. So I totally agree. Elon's interesting because he had a successful business, made a couple $100 million, which if I got a couple $100 million, I'd be like, hey, I made it. You know what I mean? I'm good. He reinvested it into multiple other companies to the point where he was broke and literally sleeping on couches. And he did it again and then became the richest person in the world. I don't know many people like that. And I don't know if I would do that, but I love that kind of mentality. And one of the things that I've noticed is that if you want to find excuses, they're out there. So like in dental, it's like insurances suck. Like they really hurt dental practices. Competition is fierce. Like pre-COVID, it was so much easier to not have, the competition was just a lot lower. So pre-COVID, there was competition was just less. There was less people marketing. It was just less competitive. People were not as brutal in their marketing. Now it's just like no one really cares anymore. It's just like say or do whatever you want in your marketing. And so the competition is increased. You have DSOs that are just like cutting corners and doing it in such a way that really impacts the industry overall. Private equity's coming in and just absolutely decimating businesses, and they have a whole track record of how they approach business, and it's not a positive thing usually. And so there's student debt is through the roof, right? Like $500,000 to go to college to become a dentist is absolutely insane.
Or even worse, to be like a teacher that you can't pay the loan off or something like that.
Yeah. So there's excuses. Like they're out there, and if you go and find them, you will have them, and they're valid excuses. However, you don't have to focus on those. And there's a lot of people not focusing on them, and they're focusing on all the opportunity. And what I see when the pressure cooker is really high, I actually see the opportunity in that, because I know not many people are going to be willing to push through that.
Right. For sure. I think it's interesting. I love playing golf, but I don't get to play it nearly as much as I'd like. And the beautiful thing about golf is, though you may be playing against other people, the person you're really playing against is yourself. And like you can either fall apart, because there's always going to be a part in the round where you like lose it, where you're like, man, I forgot how to swing a golf club. But the same thing is true in business. Like, your mentality matters so much, because the only person you're competing with is yourself. And if you can look at your market, and you can look at your competitors and look at what they're doing well and what they're not doing well, and use that as a resource. But at the end of the day, you have to sit there and say, how badly do I want the goals that I say that I want? And if I really want them really badly, am I willing to make sacrifices to get there? And that doesn't mean that you have to get a divorce, or you have to be a bad mom or dad, or that you have to do any of those things. It just means that you're going to be radically focused in the time blocks that you make for yourself on achieving those goals. And those goals, I think goals have to be time bound too. Like, my mentor talks a lot about time harnessing. And what I've been really bad in the past is, giving team members a task to do, but not giving them a date in which I want the task to be completed by. And then I get frustrated by it. And once again, like, whose fault is that? That's my fault. It's not their fault. They didn't know I wanted it done by Friday. They just said, yeah, you told me to do it, and I've been busy, so I haven't gotten to it. And so it really does come down to, like, I think one of the books on the list is Extreme Ownership. And it's like, are you willing to literally look at every problem and say, what part do I own in this? I had a pastor one time, he was like, even if you feel like you didn't do anything, like you did nothing wrong, what's the 1% that you can own? And I love that thought, because it carries into different parts of life. Is like, what's the 1%? Even if you did nothing wrong, what's the 1% you can own? Because at the end of the day, that's all that will drive you forward.
Yeah. And the reason, so I teach my kids this as well, is like, and I love what your dad has taught you. And it's like, if you did nothing wrong and there's nothing you can do about it, then you have no control. You've lost control, and it's just like, okay, well, you're just floating down the river and life's just happening to you. But what can you control, and what can you change, and what can you do better? Or what is even a lesson that you can get from that opportunity? You brought up a great point where time bound goals are really important. So in our company wise, we're always growing. So we want to grow our team, we want to grow our clients, and we want to grow the company as a byproduct. And there's two elements of growth. There's urgency and pain. If you don't have, I have to tell my team this all the time, guys, if there's no urgency, then you're not growing. It's not growing. It's easy to say someday my business will be, that's easy. Anybody can do that. But if you say this month or this quarter or this year, we're going to do this, now all of a sudden there's urgency to move. And then there has to be some kind of pain with it. If it's just like, oh yeah, no, we're just doing this and it's easy, and there's no kind of like discomfort or pain, or maybe pain's the wrong word, especially for dental, but like discomfort, then you're actually not growing, right? Like there is no growth there. Have you, I added this book on our list. Have you ever read The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek? So it's pretty cool. So you brought up golf and it popped into my brain. So basically what he breaks down is that in sports, when you're playing golf, you're playing against yourself, right? Or if you play baseball, you're playing against another team. But there's a scoreboard. And everybody knows what the scoreboard is, and everybody knows what the rules are. You're playing Monopoly. Everybody knows there's a beginning, there's an end, and we all agree on the rules. So there's a clear winner and loser. In business, and I fell into this trap early on, there actually is no rules. Like, there's rules of running a business, but there's no rules to the game. And there is no beginning and there is no end. It's infinite. And the only rule in business is keep playing. Don't go to jail. And don't shut the doors. That's it. Like, if your doors are open and you're not in jail for breaking some kind of like legal law, then you're winning. And we get in. So I used to say something like this. I used to say, I want to have the biggest and the best marketing company in the world. And when I read that book, what he said is he's like, well, what does that mean? Who are you competing against? And do they even know the rules to the game that you're playing with them? And I was like, well, no. So that actually doesn't mean anything. Right? It's just that you can't even reach that goal.
That's so good. I love that. And that's like ever more true in dentistry. Like, you look at a practice like mine that's out of network, and there's a Medicaid office somewhere in this country that is blowing me out of the water. Like, truly, you know what I mean? And it's like two totally different models. The rules to the game are radically different, but results can be produced. And it comes down to who's manning the ship. And are you going to be a tugboat, or are you going to be a lighthouse? And true leaders are lighthouses. I am the chief tugboat officer, and I'm learning how to get away from that, because I will pull people to the promised land, and then they'll get there and be like, why am I here? Whereas if you do it right, you're the lighthouse, and they're like, I want to go there because that looks awesome. Right. And that's what you have to be if you want to be a true leader, and you want to take true ownership of everything that's happening. Is you've got to be that light on the hill that people look at. And that doesn't mean you're going to do everything right, but you're going to do a lot of things right. And people are going to see that and they want to follow that.
So what's been the difference between Tugboat and Lighthouse for you?
I think the season I'm coming out of it is learning that I have tolerated things in my life that have frustrated me. And I had to disseminate some of this stuff down to that fact to learn that. But I was getting exactly the results that I was creating. I was allowing things to happen that were frustrating me, but it was, well, it's because this person's been here for so long, or, well, it's not that bad, or, well, at least it happened today instead of tomorrow when we're busy. And I had to get to the point to where it was like, these are the rules to our game and our organization. And if we don't play by these rules, then there are consequences, just like there are in life. And consequences isn't a bad word. There's good consequences and there's bad consequences. And so a lot of my team get good consequences often because they do a really good job. But I've had to rearrange some positions to where the bad consequences get dealt with appropriately.
So let's walk through that, because one of the things I hear, and one of the things I'll use me because it's easier to use me. One of the things I used to say early on in business is my team sucks. And I was like, dude, my team sucks. And I'd hear people say stuff like, there's no such thing as a bad team. There's just bad leaders. And I'm like, whatever, you're stupid. And then eventually one day I woke up and I was like, oh man, it is me. When you have your whole team turn over and you get a whole new team, and you're like, oh, maybe it is. And you have the same problems again. And then it's like, oh, maybe it is me. So I hear this in dental a lot, like, oh, no one wants to work. My team doesn't want to work. No one wants to do anything. And that's just like, to me, is like the old me going, my whole team sucks. And I'm just like, no, it's probably a you issue.
It may be true. Like your team might suck and you might need to replace them. But if you replace them and keep the same systems of how you've trained and if you're doing all the right things as a leader, where you're having weekly one-on-ones and you're setting expectations and you're doing these things, and they're still not producing the outcome that you're expecting, then your statement may not be wrong. They might just be the wrong person on the bus, which is okay. And so now the question goes back to what I was just talking about. It was like, well, what are you tolerating? Like, are you willing to tolerate that? And if you are, then you need to be okay with the outcome that you get. But if you're not, then you move on and you put somebody in that new seat.
Yeah. So how have you like worked through that when you realize, okay, well, these people aren't doing what I want them to do. And I thought I've asked them, but I maybe didn't ask them at the time, whatever. How did you kind of pull yourself out of that and flip the table? Like, how did you, like, what's the practical step by step to do that?
Yeah. I mean, it was realizing like kind of what blending a lot of what we've talked about already is like I'm in control of my future. And if I want to wake up every day frustrated because my team sucks or this person isn't doing the responsibility that I expect of them, then it's ultimately my decision of do I accept that and live with it, or do I make a decision to change it and go and have that conversation of like, and this is where like dentists struggle. It's like they don't want to have those conversations. And ultimately what's going to happen is if you haven't frequently had those conversations with these team members, they're going to leave because you're going to show up one day and they've been getting away with sin. And then all of a sudden now you want to talk to them about it. And they're like, well, this is weird. Like I've been doing this for 4 years and now all of a sudden it's a problem. Right. And so like you just got to be ready for that. But if you start off strong with strong expectations and strong communication and that agape love that Jason Torrey talks about all the time, and you say, hey, these are the rules, and I want to help support you in growing past these to where you can become even more than what you think is possible. Then I found that those people are the people that I really want to be around. I enjoy waking up and coming to the office being around because they're like, they see a problem and they meet a need. And the frustrating thing I think for a lot of dental practices is like the owner feels like they own all the problems. And like there's an analogy, I forget where it comes from, but there's like a monkey on your back. And as a business owner, there's 50 monkeys. And you need to be able to take a monkey off one by one and hand those monkeys to the right person to get those tasks completed or the things done. But what drags so many practice owners down is like they're unwilling to let go of the monkey, or they don't have anyone to give the monkey to.
Do you feel that because the nature of dentistry is perfection, right? Like dentists, you do have to.
Was it the Pareto rule? It's like 80-20. Like, yeah, get it there, and then you can polish it off at the end. And frankly, like I've done a poor job of that. I've gotten better over the past year or two of delegating that stuff, but there's still a lot that I like really want to hold on to. But it's really cool and really fulfilling, honestly.
I know. I see you on the weekends, like digging through your leads and stuff and answering. I'll catch you answering the phones and stuff. I'm like, what is he doing?
But I don't know how true that is. But
I do see you're like always working.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And some of that is because like on the weekends when my kids are taking a nap.
I do the same thing. I actually enjoy what I do. So I'm just like, I get really excited and I'm like, oh, last night I was working on something and it was like I woke up at like 3 or 4 and I was like, oh, I got to do this thing. And I woke up and started typing notes, went back to bed.
Yeah. The question is like, what is work? Like to me, when I'm doing that stuff, I'm usually like sitting on my back porch watching golf, like thinking about things. And like that's another thing that I think a lot of dentists that like want to grow or considering like what does growing mean, they're so busy doing the dentistry that there's not creative space. And so for me, what the weekends look like, or what, Friday afternoon when the kids are taking a nap looks like, is like, all right, I've got some free time to get creative. And so that's usually when you'll get these like weird texts and emails from me of like, Gary, I had this idea, like, what if we didn't charge anybody anything? Like, would that help us grow? And you're like, all right, chill out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and I love it because I love talking through these problems, right? And I love trying to solve these problems. I enjoy it. It exhilarates me. But going back to your point about the perfectionist and the 80-20 rule, I think what dentists struggle with, and I would love your opinion on this because you're a dentist, like you do have to have a level of perfectionism with dental because of the clinical side of it. You're operating in such a small space and there is really no margin for error, right? Like there isn't. But business is not that way. You actually have a lot more room for error, and you can't let that attitude of clinical dental carry over into your business, because instinctually you think it's like, oh, that's going to help me. But in fact, it just ticks everybody off and just creates this like unbearable environment. Is that true?
Yeah, for sure. I've told you a little bit about like the small little mastermind group of guys that I have, and my buddy Andrew Vallow is in that group, and somebody had brought up something about Invisalign, and like he's running a lot of the ads and stuff that he runs in his market for Invisalign. And I think the question came up of, well, how do you, when they're seeing your associate, how do you prevent them wanting to see you? And his answer was just like, I don't worry about it. It was like, it's not something I think about. And the point was like, just do it. Like create the problem. Like I've worked with Sully Sullivan in the past, and like one of his one-liners, like, create the problem. Like, don't try to solve a problem that doesn't exist. Just create the problem. Create the problem of, man, we have so many people coming in that want Invisalign, but they want to see Dr. Hamblin. And then solve that problem.
Yeah. Because that's an easier problem to solve, actually. And so what I actually learned this a long time ago from a consultant that we worked with was Gary. They said this to me. They said, Gary, you keep solving problems that you don't have yet. You're solving So we would be like, well, what if we do this and this and we're grow? And then I'd be like, well, but then we're going to have to hire these kind of people. And these kind of people are really hard to find. And they were like, Gary, you don't have that problem yet. Like, so don't go solve operational problems. Now, I will say that doesn't mean that you let dumpster fires happen. If there's right, like, it's like, because I can already hear people listening to us and they're like, oh, I'm going to spend.
It's responsible decision making.
It is. Yeah. So if you go spend $20,000 on marketing, like, you need to have someone answering the phones. Like, you know what I mean? If you don't have anybody answering the phones, it's not like, we'll solve that next. Cause it's not, you'll solve it next. It's like tomorrow you're going to solve it.
Well, it's like what we talked about in the last episode. Like, you want to shoot more video in your office. Well, I want it to look good, and I want it to sound good. I want it to blah, blah, blah. And I blah, 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 blah. And like, you can paralyze yourself to where you just never do it. And it's just, okay, I'm going to commit to making 3 videos next week, and I don't care what they look like. They're made, right? And that, yeah, it's so good. I love it.
So I think, you know what, I just jotted down some notes, and I would love to know from the audience, what if we did an episode on how to run an effective one-on-one? Because I don't think most dentists run one-on-ones with their team. I think they do morning huddles, and then it's kind of like everything else goes. They might meet with their office manager once in a while, kind of in passing, you know what I mean? But not like true one-on-ones with their team on a rotating basis. Do you think that would be a good episode?
100%. And I will tell you that what changed my organization, bar none, was starting to lean into my team and getting to know them on that level. And when you meet, and it doesn't mean that you have to meet with every single person every week, because some of the people listening have a massive office and they can't do that. But like my office manager and ops manager, they're regularly meeting with our team to learn, like, what do they love about their job? What do they not like? All that stuff. So we can dive deep into that. And I think it would be super helpful, because it was helpful for me.
Yeah, it helped me too. That's the number one thing that's helped our company, is that we have regular one-on-ones. Some people meet every week, some every other week. Like, there's different ways to do it. But we'll give you a lot of people are scared of it, because what dentists think is like, oh, I'm going to meet with them and they're going to all ask for raises. No, the reason they ask for raises every time you meet with them is because
that's the only time you're.
Yeah. So dentists avoid one-on-ones because they don't want to give everybody raises. And it's like, actually, you would save a lot of money if you just did one-on-ones with turnover. And yeah, so I've heard that one a lot. Awesome. Well, this is a great episode. Again, check out our website, mydentalplaybook.com. We have all the list. I put all the books that we've both read. It's pretty amazing. I think all of them except for one we both read, and we're like, these are really good books and have really formed our mindset around these kind of things. So great job today.
Yeah, I love it. Thanks for having me, Gary.